This morning, I checked my bank balance online. Negative $450,000. And then I got the text message that made my blood run cold. Thanks for the house and the car, Mom. I just smiled. My dear daughter had no idea whose credit card that really was. My name is Carolyn. I'm 67 years old, and I thought I had seen it all. But nothing prepared me for waking up to discover my own daughter had stolen nearly $500,000 from me while I slept. Diana, or Jessica, as I named her, was always special to me. I adopted her when she was 3 years old. After her biological parents died in a car accident, I gave her everything. My youth, my marriage, my dreams, all for her. When I got home that morning after checking my account at the bank, Jessica was in the living room with her husband, Kevin. Both of them had a smirk on their faces that made me sick to my stomach. A smile of triumph, of superiority, as if they had just won the lottery at my expense. Mom, I have to tell you something, Jessica said, fiddling with the keys to a brand new car. Kevin and I bought a house. A beautiful house, she said, with a yard and 3 bedrooms. She'd always dreamed of having her own home. And where did you get the money? I asked, though I already knew the answer. My voice was calm. Too calm. Well, Kevin cleared his throat. We used your card. Jess said it was money you had saved up for us. For our future. After all your hard work, we figured it was only fair that you help us get started. How convenient. How perfectly calculated. My daughter had been stealing from me in small increments for months. Little amounts she thought I wouldn't notice. But this time, she'd gone for the big score. $450,000 in one go. Jessica, I said, do you know which account you took that money from? She shrugged. From your savings account, Mom, the one you've had for years. The one you used to pay for the house, for groceries, everything. She laughed, a sound that broke my heart. Honestly, I didn't know you had that much money stashed away. You're always complaining about barely making ends meet. Yeah, Kevin added. Jess told me you were living pension check to pension check, that you barely had enough for food. But it turns out you were rich and didn't tell us a thing. Why would you lie to us? I stood there in silence. I looked at them, these 2 young people, so sure of themselves, so proud of their little heist. They had no idea what they had just done. They didn't know who I really was. For years, I had kept my personal life separate from my professional one. Jessica believed her mother was a poor old woman who cleaned offices for a living. I never told her about my properties, my investments, or the logistics company I had built from the ground up. Do you think it's okay to steal from your mother? I finally asked. It's not stealing, Jessica stood up, her voice turning defensive. It's using what's rightfully mine. After everything I've put up with, living in this old house, wearing secondhand clothes, pretending we were poor when you had all this money hidden away. Everything you've put up with, I repeated slowly. You mean like when I worked 3 jobs to pay for your college tuition? Or when I sold my car to buy you that green prom dress you wanted so badly? Or maybe when I mortgaged this house to pay for your wedding? That's different, Kevin mumbled. That was your obligation as a mother. My obligation. As if being a mother was the same as being an ATM. As if adopting her, loving her, raising her, was a debt I had to keep paying until the day I died. Jessica walked up to me, her eyes shining with a cruelty she had learned to hide so well. Look, Mom, it's done. The house is in our name. The car, too. You can't turn back time. And honestly, after all these years of keeping up this poverty act, I think we deserve this. Poverty act? I asked. Yes, she crossed her arms. Always crying about not having money, about how hard life was, how you had to work so much. But it turns out you had almost $500,000 just sitting there. Do you know how humiliating it was for me to grow up thinking we were poor? Do you know how many times I was embarrassed to bring friends over because I thought we had nothing? Kevin nodded. Jessica suffered a lot because of you, always feeling like she was less than everyone else. Now she can finally have what she deserves. What she deserves. After stealing from me, after lying to me, after treating me like an obstacle in their perfect lives. All right, I said finally. Enjoy the house. Enjoy the car. Jessica blinked, surprised by my reaction. Really? You're not going to make a scene? No, I smiled. I just hope it's worth it. And it was true. Because what Jessica didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that the account they had emptied wasn't my personal savings. It was my company's operating account. An account that was audited monthly. An account that had insurance, legal protections, and above all, an account that did not belong to them in any way, shape, or form. By the next day, they would be crying at my door. But this time, I wasn't going to open it. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not from sadness, but from the rage burning in my gut. I lay awake remembering every moment, every sacrifice I had made for Jessica, every time I gave something up for her, every time I swallowed my pride to give her what she wanted. When I adopted her, she was a scared little girl who cried every night. I promised her she would never want for anything, and I kept that promise. I worked cleaning offices during the day and studied accounting at night. When I finally managed to open my small logistics company, I decided to keep it a secret. I wanted Jessica to have a normal childhood, without the pressure of knowing her mother handled a lot of money. How stupid I was. The next morning, my phone rang. It was Arthur, my lawyer and accountant. His voice was tense. "Carolyn, we have a serious problem. Someone withdrew $450,000 from the Trans-Logistics operating account. The bank called me because it's an unusual amount and they need authorization for the monthly report." "I know, Arthur. It was my daughter." Silence on the other end of the line. Then, a deep sigh. "Carolyn, that account is registered as a business asset. Any unauthorized withdrawal constitutes embezzlement. It's a federal crime." "I know," I replied calmly. "What do you need me to do?" "First, I need you to come to the office to document everything. Second, I have to ask, do you want to proceed legally, or should we try to recover the money privately?" For a moment, I hesitated. She was my daughter, the little girl I had raised, whom I had loved unconditionally for 24 years. But then, I remembered her triumphant smile, her cruel words, the way she had treated me like garbage. "Proceed legally," I said. "Jessica needs to learn that actions have consequences." That afternoon, driving to Arthur's office, I passed through the neighborhood where Jessica had bought her new house. It was an elegant residential area with large houses and perfect lawns. The house she had bought with my stolen money was beautiful. A white facade, huge windows, a red sports car parked in the driveway. I stopped in front of the house and watched for a few minutes. Jessica was in the yard, watering some newly planted flowers. She was wearing a new yellow dress, expensive shoes, and that same look of satisfaction that turned my stomach. Kevin came out of the house with a beer in his hand, hugged her from behind, and they both laughed at something. They looked so happy, so proud of their new life built on my work, my sacrifice, my stolen money. I stepped on the gas and drove away. At Arthur's office, we went over all the documentation. The withdrawals had started 6 months ago. Small amounts at first, $1,000 here, $2,000 there. But in the last few weeks, Jessica had gotten bolder. 5,000, 10,000, 15,000, until the final blow of 450,000. "How did she get access to the account?" Arthur asked. "I gave her a supplementary card years ago, when she started college. It was for emergencies. I never thought she would use it for this. I felt so naive, so stupid. I always checked the statements, but they were small amounts at first. I thought they were legitimate expenses. Carolyn, the total stolen over these 6 months comes to $580,000, Arthur said, showing me the papers. Not just the $450,000 from yesterday. She has been stealing from you systematically. $580,000. Almost everything I had in that operating account. Money I needed to pay salaries, suppliers, company expenses. Jessica hadn't just stolen from me. She had stolen from my employees, from their families. "What happens now?" I asked. "We file the report today. The bank freezes all transactions related to that card. And since she used the money to buy real estate and a vehicle, we can request the immediate seizure of both as evidence of the crime." "How long will that take?" "If all goes well, we'll have the court orders by tomorrow afternoon. Jessica is about to find out she robbed the wrong account." That night, I decided to stay in a hotel. I couldn't be in my house, waiting for Jessica to come celebrate her theft, to rub her new life built on my pain in my face. I chose the Emperor Hotel, the most elegant in the city. I booked the presidential suite. If I was going to plan my revenge, I was going to do it in style. From my window, I could see the whole city, all the lights, all the buildings, the entire life I had built in silence, while Jessica believed her mother was just a poor old cleaning lady. My phone rang. It was Jessica. "Mom, where are you? I came home to show you pictures of the new house, and you're not here." "I'm busy," I replied. "Busy with what? Cleaning offices this late?" She laughed. "Mom, you don't have to work so hard anymore. Now that we know you have money saved up, you can relax a little." "Jessica, I have a question for you." "What is it? Did you ever wonder where the money you stole came from?" Silence. Then, her voice turned defensive. "I didn't steal anything. I used money that was rightfully mine. Money you had been hiding from me my whole life. And what if I told you that money wasn't mine? What are you talking about? What if I told you that you just committed a federal crime?" Jessica laughed, but it sounded nervous. "Mom, stop being so dramatic. It's your money, your card. There's no crime." "You'll find out tomorrow," I said, and hung up. The next morning, Arthur called me early. "We have the orders. The agents are on their way to the house. They're also going to impound the car. Jessica will be served with a court summons in a few hours." "What's going to happen to her?" "Depending on whether she cooperates, she could face between 5 and 10 years in prison for embezzlement and fraud. Plus, she'll have to pay back every cent, plus interest and penalties. 5 to 10 years. My daughter could go to prison for 5 to 10 years. For a moment, I felt a pang of pain. But then I remembered her words. It's my obligation as a mother. I remembered how she had treated me, how she had justified stealing from me, how she had celebrated ruining my life. Number Jessica had chosen this path. Now she would have to walk it to the end. At 11 in the morning, my phone started blowing up with calls. Jessica, Kevin, unknown numbers. I didn't answer any of them, but I did read the text messages that flooded in over the next few hours. "Mom, answer the phone right now." "What have you done?" "The police took our car." "Mom, please call me. I'm desperate. You are a terrible mother. How could you do this to me?" "Mom, I'm sorry. Please, let's fix this." Each message was more desperate than the last. Jessica had finally understood that she had robbed the wrong account, that she had completely underestimated her mother, that she had played with fire and gotten burned. But I was just getting started. At 2 in the afternoon, I decided to do something I hadn't done in years. I went shopping, not just anywhere. I drove straight to the most exclusive mall in the city, the one where Jessica had always dreamed of shopping but could never afford. Ironic, considering she now knew her poor mother had the means to do so. In the most expensive boutique, I chose an elegant black dress, Italian shoes, and a handbag that cost more than what Jessica earned in 3 months at her receptionist job. When the saleswoman saw my platinum business card, her attitude changed completely. "Ma'am, would you like us to show you our private collection?" she asked with a perfect smile. "Of course," I replied. "After all, I have a reason to celebrate." While I was trying on clothes worth more than the car Jessica had bought with my stolen money, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. I finally turned it off. I needed peace to plan my next move. When I left the mall, transformed and feeling powerful, I decided to drive to the real estate office where Jessica had bought the house. It was a prestigious agency in the financial district, the same place where I had bought 3 commercial properties over the last 5 years. I walked in with my new look and asked to speak with the agent who had handled Jessica's sale. A young, ambitious man named Cody greeted me in his office. "How can I help you, ma'am?" he asked, clearly impressed by my presence. "I understand you sold a house in the Willow Creek subdivision yesterday to a young woman named Jessica Williams." "I'm her mother." Cody smiled. "Ah, yes, a very successful sale. Your daughter and son-in-law are thrilled with their new home. They paid in full, almost $500,000, a very clean transaction." "I can imagine," I said calmly. "Did they mention where they got the money?" "Well, they said it was a family inheritance. Your daughter mentioned you had been saving for years to help them start their life together." Cody seemed proud to have facilitated such a beautiful family story. How interesting, I murmured. And when the bank contacts you to inform you that the money was stolen, what's going to happen to the sale? The color drained from Cody's face. Excuse me? The money they used to buy that house was stolen from a corporate account. Money that did not belong to them. The transaction is going to be voided, and the house will be seized as evidence in a federal crime. Cody started to stammer. But they said. They had all the paperwork. The wire transfer went through without a problem. Of course it did. It was my money. I stood up. They just didn't have authorization to use it. Your agency just facilitated the purchase of a property with stolen funds. I hope you have a good legal department. I left the office, leaving Cody completely pale, no doubt already dialing his supervisors to report the impending disaster. My next stop was the dealership where Jessica had bought the car, a luxury imported car agency where I had never set foot, but whose reputation I knew because several of my corporate clients shopped there. The manager, an older man named Gene, recognized me immediately. Mrs. Miller, what a surprise to see you here. Are you finally going to buy that Mercedes I recommended last year? Hello, Gene. I'm here on a different matter. Yesterday, you sold a car to my daughter, Jessica Williams, a red BMW. Ah, yes. Lovely young woman. Very excited about her purchase. Paid $65,000 in cash. Said it was a gift from her successful entrepreneur mother. Jean smiled. I'm so glad to hear you finally told your family about your company. I always found it odd that you kept your success a secret. Yes, well, family secrets sometimes come to light in unexpected ways, I said. The problem is, she didn't have authorization to use that money. It was stolen from my business account. Jean's smile vanished instantly. Are you saying? I'm saying your dealership just sold a car with stolen money. The vehicle is going to be impounded today. I hope you've kept all the transaction paperwork because you're going to need it for the investigation. Jean stood up abruptly. Mrs. Miller, we had no idea. The transaction seemed completely legal. Your daughter presented identification. The wire transfer went through without any issues. I know, Jean. You're not at fault, but you will have to cooperate with the authorities to recover the vehicle. As I left the dealership, I saw Gene was already on the phone, probably calling his legal department and the insurance company. Jessica hadn't just ruined her own life. She had created legal problems for everyone who had innocently participated in her shopping spree with stolen money. My phone, which I had turned back on, had 53 missed calls and 26 text messages. Jessica was desperate. The messages had evolved from rage to pleading. Mom, please, pick up the phone. I need to explain what happened. It was a misunderstanding. I didn't know it was a company account. The lawyers say I could go to jail. Mom, help me please. I'll give it all back. Just don't do this to me. I'm your daughter. How can you destroy my life like this? But the last message was different. It was from Kevin. Mrs. Miller, we need to talk. Jessica is having a panic attack. The lawyers told us this is very serious. Please, can we handle this as a family? We don't want to go to trial. A panic attack. After 24 years of treating me like her personal maid, after stealing almost $500,000, after celebrating the ruin of my life, Jessica was having a panic attack because there were finally consequences for her actions. I decided to answer that message. Kevin, you should have thought about the consequences before you stole the money. It's too late for family arrangements now. His reply came in seconds. Please, ma'am, Jessica didn't know it was a company account. She thought it was your personal money. It was an innocent mistake. An innocent mistake. Stealing $580,000 over 6 months was an innocent mistake. Kevin, an innocent mistake is using the wrong card at the grocery store. Stealing $500,000 to buy a house is a premeditated crime. Jessica knew exactly what she was doing. But she's your daughter, ma'am. Your own adopted daughter. How can you send her to jail? There it was, the adoption card. The emotional play they knew would hurt me, reminding me that Jessica wasn't my biological child, as if that meant I had less right to expect respect and honesty from her. Kevin, it's precisely because she is my adopted daughter, because I chose her, because I gave her all my love and my life, that her betrayal hurts more. A biological child might disappoint you by accident. An adopted child who steals from you is a knife straight to the heart. There was no reply after that. That night, from my hotel suite, I called Arthur for a full report. The seizure orders were executed successfully, he said. The house is sealed, and the car is in the judicial impound lot. Jessica and Kevin had to leave the property with only what they could carry in a suitcase. Where are they now? As far as we know, they're staying in a cheap motel on the outskirts of the city. Jessica has hired a public defender. Her first hearing is the day after tomorrow. What are her chances? Carolyn, let's be honest. With all the evidence we have, it's almost impossible for her to avoid prison. The only way would be if you dropped the charges and they reached a private settlement for restitution. And if I don't drop the charges? Between 5 and 10 years in federal prison, plus full restitution, plus fines and interest, her life, as she knows it, is over. 5 to 10 years. My daughter, the little girl I had raised since she was 3, could spend the next decade in prison for stealing from me. Did it hurt? Of course it hurt. But what also hurt was every cruel word she had said to me, every time she had treated me like trash, every moment she had celebrated destroying my life. Arthur, I said finally, proceed with everything. Jessica needs to learn that decisions have consequences, and I need to learn to stop protecting people who hurt me. The next day, I received a call I wasn't expecting. It was Susan, my younger sister, who lived in another city and rarely spoke to me. Carolyn, Jessica called me crying. She told me what's happening. Is it true you're going to send her to jail? Jessica stole $580,000 from my company, Susan. I'm not the one sending her to jail. She's the one who put herself in this situation. But she's your daughter. Susan sounded desperate. You raised her from a baby. How can you be so cold? Cold? I repeated slowly. Susan, do you know how many times Jessica told me I was a burden to her? Do you know how many times she made me feel like I owed her something just for existing? She robbed me, celebrated robbing me, and now that there are consequences, I'm the bad guy. But you can drop the charges, you can forgive her. And then what? She robs me again in 6 months? She keeps treating me like garbage because she knows there will never be consequences? My voice was breaking, not from sadness, but from years of suppressed rage. Susan, Jessica, never respected me. She never valued anything I did for her. To her, I was always just a walking ATM. Carolyn, please. No, I cut her off. For 24 years, I gave her everything. I gave up having more children for her. I gave up remarrying for her. I worked day and night to give her everything she wanted, and she repaid me by stealing from me and humiliating me. No more, Susan. It's over. I hung up the phone feeling a strange mix of relief and pain. It was the first time in years I had said out loud everything I had sacrificed for Jessica, everything I had given up for a daughter who never appreciated it. An hour later, another message from Jessica arrived. This one was different, longer, more desperate. Mom, I know you're furious with me and you have every right to be. I know what I did was wrong, but please, don't let this destroy our family forever. I'm willing to give back all the money, to work to pay you back for years if I have to. But please, don't send me to jail. I won't survive in there. I'm begging you, as your daughter, as the little girl you raised, give me a chance to fix this. For the first time in days, Jessica sounded genuinely remorseful. She wasn't blaming me. She wasn't justifying her actions. She wasn't playing the victim card. She was admitting her mistake and asking for forgiveness. For a moment, my heart softened. Maybe we could fix this. Maybe she had learned her lesson. Maybe. Then I remembered something. I remembered the smile on her face when she told me she had used my money. I remembered how she had celebrated her cleverness in robbing me. I remembered every cruel word, every moment of contempt, every time she had treated me like I was worthless. And I remembered something more important. This hadn't been an impulse. Jessica had been stealing from me for 6 months. She had planned the big heist. She had calculated exactly how much to take to buy the house and the car. It had been methodical, deliberate, cruel. I replied, Jessica, if you were truly sorry, you wouldn't have stolen from me in the first place. If you truly loved me as a daughter, you wouldn't have celebrated ruining my life. Your remorse only came when you found out there were consequences. That's not real remorse. It's fear. Her response was immediate. Mom, please, I'm young. I made a mistake. Everyone deserves a second chance. Jessica, you had 28 second chances over 6 months. Every time you used my card, you had a chance to stop. Every time you saw the money in your account, you had a chance to return it. Every time you lied to my face about your expenses, you had a chance to confess. You used all your chances, stealing more from me. That afternoon, I decided to do something I had been putting off for years: visit my parents' grave. It had been 3 years since I'd been to the cemetery. There were always excuses. Work, Jessica needed something. I didn't have time. I drove to the cemetery and sat in front of Mom and Dad's headstones. For the first time in years, I cried. But I didn't cry for Jessica. I cried for myself. For all the years I had lost being the perfect mother to a daughter who never valued me. For all the opportunities for happiness I had rejected to dedicate myself completely to someone who saw me as an obstacle. Dad, Mom, I spoke aloud. I think I got it wrong. You taught me to love, to give, to sacrifice for family, but you never taught me when to stop. You never taught me that love without respect is abuse, that giving without limits is self-destruction. The wind rustled the leaves in the trees, and for a moment I felt as if my parents were there, listening. Jessica is going to go to jail, I continued. And I know you would say I should forgive her, that she's my daughter, that family is the most important thing. But I also know that you would never have stolen from me, that you would never have treated me with the contempt she has shown me, that you would never have celebrated destroying my life. I stayed there until the sun began to set. When I stood up to leave, I felt different, lighter, as if I had left a heavy burden beside those graves. That night, in my hotel suite, Arthur called with an update. Carolyn, Jessica's lawyer, contacted me. He wants to negotiate a plea deal. Jessica is willing to plead guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence and a payment plan for restitution. What kind of reduced sentence? Probably 2 years in prison instead of 5 to 10, plus 5 years of probation during which she would have to pay the full restitution. 2 years. My daughter would spend 2 years in prison. And if we reject the deal, we go to trial, where she will likely receive the full sentence, 5 to 10 years, with no possibility of early parole. What do you recommend? Legally, the deal is reasonable. It guarantees you full restitution, and Jessica learns a severe lesson but isn't completely destroyed. If we go to trial, there's a small chance a jury might feel sorry for her and reduce the charges, but there's also the chance they'll give her the maximum. How long do I have to decide? Until tomorrow afternoon. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not from guilt or sadness, but because I was making the most important decision of my life. A decision that would define not only Jessica's future, but my own. For years, I had been the mother who forgives everything, who accepts any abuse just to keep the family peace. The mother who sacrifices herself to the point of self-destruction for love. But that love had never been returned. That sacrifice had never been valued. Jessica had taught me that unconditional love, when not reciprocated, becomes permitted abuse. That forgiving without consequences isn't kindness, it's cowardice. That being a good mother doesn't mean letting your daughter destroy you. At 3 a.m, I made my decision. I sent a message to Arthur. We reject the deal. We're going to trial. Jessica needs to face the full consequences of her actions. And I need to learn to value myself as much as I've valued others. The next day, Jessica would learn that her mother had chosen justice over emotional blackmail, that she had chosen respect over the fear of conflict, that she had finally chosen to protect herself instead of the one who was hurting her. For the first time in 24 years, I had chosen Carolyn. The day of the trial arrived faster than I expected. For the 2 weeks prior, Jessica had tried everything to get me to change my mind. Handwritten letters, calls from distant relatives. She even showed up at my translogistics office trying to talk to me. That visit had been particularly revealing. Jessica had arrived with Kevin, both dressed in black as if for a funeral, with faces of misunderstood victims. My assistant, Brenda, had warned me they were in reception. Mrs. Miller, there's a young woman here who says she's your daughter. She's very upset and insists on seeing you. Send her in, I said. It was time for Jessica to see who her mother really was. When they walked into my executive office with its panoramic city view, mahogany furniture, and original paintings on the walls, Jessica froze. Her eyes scanned every detail. The latest computer, the framed diplomas on the wall, the photos of me with other prominent business leaders in the city. "This island, this is yours," she murmured, still processing the reality. "Yes, Jessica, this is Translogistics, the company I built over the last 15 years while you believed your mother was a poor cleaning lady." Kevin was also in shock. "Mrs. Miller, we didn't know you were." "That I had what, Kevin? Success? Money? Value beyond being Jessica's maid?" I sat behind my executive desk, feeling powerful. "For years, I allowed you to see me as the poor, needy mother. But it turns out you were the poor ones. Poor in spirit, poor in values, poor in gratitude." Jessica approached my desk with tears in her eyes. "Mom, I didn't know any of this. If I had known you were so successful, I never would have." "Never would have what, Jessica?" "Never would have stolen from me, or never would have treated me like garbage." I stood and walked to the window. "The problem isn't that you didn't know how much money I had. The problem is that you thought it was acceptable to steal from me regardless of how much I had." "But Mom," "Now I understand. Now I see I was completely wrong about you. I can change. I can be the daughter you deserve." I turned to look at her directly. "Jessica, do you know the difference between you and me? When I was young and made mistakes, I learned from them and changed my behavior. You make mistakes and only change when there are consequences you can't avoid." "That's not true," Kevin protested. "Jessica is truly sorry. We've talked a lot about this and she understands what she did was wrong." "Kevin, Jessica has had 24 years to treat me well. 24 years to value my sacrifices. 24 years to show me respect." Her remorse arrived exactly when she realized she was going to jail. Not a moment sooner. Jessica knelt beside my desk. Literally knelt. "Mom, I'm begging you. I'm your daughter, the little girl you adopted, raised, and loved. You can't send me to jail. You can't destroy my life like this." "Jessica, get up off the floor. I will not allow you to use emotional blackmail on me, ever again." My voice was firm, cold. "I'm not destroying your life. You destroyed your own life when you decided to steal from me. I'm just refusing to be an accomplice to your self-destruction. But the adoption. Mom, you chose me. You said you loved me as if I were your biological daughter. And I loved you exactly like that, Jessica. But love has limits. Love doesn't mean allowing someone to abuse you indefinitely. Real love includes consequences when someone you love makes destructive choices." Kevin tried to intervene. "Mrs. Miller, we understand you're hurt, but Jessica is family. Family forgives. Family supports each other." "Kevin, for years I was the only one in this family who forgave, who sacrificed, who gave support. Jessica never forgave me a single mistake. Never gave me emotional support. Never sacrificed for me. This family was a one-way street where I gave everything and she took everything." Jessica stood up, her face transforming from pleading to rage. "You know what, Mom? Maybe you're right. Maybe I wasn't the perfect daughter. But you weren't the perfect mother either. Always working, always worried about money, never emotionally available." There she was, the real Jessica. When pleading didn't work, she went back to blaming me. "Jessica, I worked so much precisely to give you everything you wanted. And as for being emotionally available, how many times did I ask about your day and you didn't answer? How many times did I try to hug you and you pushed me away? How many times did I try to have deep conversations with you and you told me you were busy? That's different." "No, Jessica, it's exactly the same. The difference is that when you rejected me, I kept trying. When I needed emotional support, you were never available." Kevin took Jessica by the arm. "Come on, honey. It's clear she's already decided to destroy you. There's nothing more we can do here." "Kevin," I said as they headed for the door, "one last thing. Jessica didn't keep my company a secret because she wanted to protect me or give me a normal childhood. She kept me a secret because she was ashamed of me, because the role of the poor victim suited her better than the role of a successful entrepreneur's daughter." Jessica turned at the door. "That's not true." Isn't it? Then explain to me why, when you went to birthday parties for your rich friends from school, you always said your mother couldn't come because she had to work cleaning. You never invited me because you were ashamed of your adoptive mother, the poor cleaning lady. Jessica didn't answer because she knew it was true. Get out of my office, Jessica, and the next time you want to see me, let it be in court. They left without another word. That afternoon, Arthur called to confirm the trial details. Carolyn, I have to ask you one more time. Are you sure about this? Once the trial starts, there's no going back. Jessica will get the full sentence. I'm sure, Arthur. For the first time in years, I'm completely sure of something. All right. The trial starts tomorrow at 9 in the morning. The prosecutor is confident. With all the evidence we have, it's practically impossible for Jessica to avoid prison. How much time do you think she'll get? Between 5 and 8 years, plus full restitution. Her public defender is young and inexperienced. He doesn't have much to work with. 5 to 8 years. My daughter was going to spend the next 5 to 8 years of her life in prison for stealing from me. That night, I stayed awake thinking about everything that had happened. About the 3-year-old girl I had adopted, scared and vulnerable after losing her parents. About how that girl had grown into a woman who believed she had the right to rob and humiliate me. At what point had I lost my daughter? At what point had Jessica decided her mother was the enemy instead of her ally? Maybe the mistake had been mine from the beginning. Maybe I had been too permissive, too self-sacrificing, too willing to forgive anything. Maybe I had raised a narcissist by never setting clear boundaries. But I also knew it was too late to change the past. I could only change the future. And my future no longer included allowing someone to treat me the way Jessica had, no matter how much I loved them. At 6 in the morning, I got up and prepared for the trial. I chose a conservative black suit, my pearl necklace, and comfortable shoes. It was going to be a long day. When I arrived at the courthouse, there were reporters outside. Apparently, the story of the successful businesswoman sending her adopted daughter to jail for theft had caught the media's attention. Mrs. Miller, how do you feel sending your own daughter to prison? A reporter yelled. I stopped and looked at her directly. I feel like a mother who finally taught her daughter that actions have consequences, something I should have done many years ago. And I walked into the courthouse, ready to finally close this chapter of my life. The courtroom was packed, not just with family and onlookers, but with reporters who had turned my family's pain into public entertainment. Jessica sat at the defense table, dressed in a simple gray suit she had probably borrowed. She looked small, vulnerable, nothing like the arrogant woman who had celebrated robbing me. When our eyes met for the first time in weeks, I saw something in them I hadn't seen before. Real fear. Not the manipulative fear she used when she wanted something, but genuine terror of what was about to happen to her. For a second, just a second, my mother's heart softened. Then I remembered her smile when she said, "Thanks for the house and the car, Mom," and my heart hardened again. The prosecutor, a serious man named Mr. Davis, presented the case with surgical precision. Every transaction, every withdrawal, every lie meticulously documented. The evidence was overwhelming. $580,000 stolen over 6 months from a business account to which Jessica only had access for emergencies. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Mr. Davis said in his opening statement, "This is not a case of a desperate daughter taking money in a family emergency. This is the story of a systematic, calculated, and cruel theft by a woman who stole from her own adoptive mother's company, risking not only Mrs. Miller's assets, but the jobs of 20 families who depend on translogistics." Jessica lowered her head when Mr. Davis mentioned the employees. It was something she had probably never considered, that her theft affected not just me, but all the people who worked for my company. The public defender, a nervous young man, tried to paint Jessica as a victim of circumstance. He spoke of her childhood as an orphan, of how she had grown up not knowing her mother's true financial status, of how she had misinterpreted the availability of the money. My client, he argued with a trembling voice, grew up believing her mother was a low-income worker struggling to make ends meet. When she discovered money was available, she genuinely thought it was money her mother had been saving for her future. It was a pathetic defense, and everyone in the room knew it. Even if Jessica had believed that, it didn't explain why she had taken the money in secret, why she had lied about the expenses, why she had celebrated deceiving her mother. The first witness was Arthur, my accountant and lawyer. He presented all the financial documentation with the precision of a machine. Every number, every date, every unauthorized transaction. When his testimony was over, it was impossible to deny that Jessica had been systematically stealing for months. The second witness was Brenda, my assistant at Translogistics. She testified about how Jessica had visited the office multiple times over the past few years, always seeing the company's luxuries, but never asking about her mother's business. Miss Williams seemed uncomfortable every time she came to the office, Brenda testified, as if she didn't want to be there. Mrs. Miller always tried to include her in conversations about the company, but Jessica would always change the subject or say she had to leave. Then came the witnesses that hurt me the most, my employees. One by one, they took the stand and spoke about how Jessica's theft had endangered their jobs. When the operating account was nearly empty, testified Rosalia, my human resources manager, we couldn't make payroll on time. We had to take out an emergency loan. Several employees thought the company was going bankrupt and started looking for other jobs. Jessica didn't look up during this entire testimony. She was finally understanding that her innocent mistake had had real consequences for real people. When it was my turn to testify, I approached the stand feeling the weight of 24 years of motherhood on my shoulders. Mr. Davis guided me through my history with Jessica, the adoption, the sacrifices I had made, my decision to keep my business success private to give her a normal childhood. Mrs. Miller, Mr. Davis asked, why did you decide to keep your company a secret? I wanted Jessica to have a childhood without pressure. I didn't want her to feel obligated to follow in my footsteps or for other kids to befriend her just because of her family's money. I wanted her to develop her own identity and her own values. And how did Jessica react when you occasionally mentioned your company? She always changed the subject. She seemed uncomfortable or bored. Eventually, I stopped mentioning it because it was clear she wasn't interested. When did you realize Jessica was stealing money from your business account? The first small withdrawals I attributed to legitimate expenses. Jessica had used the card for emergencies before. But when I saw the $450,000 withdrawal and received her message thanking me for the house and the car, I understood that she had been stealing from me systematically. What was your emotional reaction to this discovery? I took a moment to answer. The courtroom was completely silent. I felt betrayed, more deeply than I thought possible. Not just because of the money, but because of the celebration. Jessica showed no guilt or remorse. She was proud to have tricked her poor mother. That night, I understood that for years I had been living with a stranger who saw me as an obstacle to her happiness, not as the mother who had sacrificed everything for her. Did you consider dropping the charges? Yes. For days, I struggled with that decision. Jessica is my adopted daughter. I love her deeply. But I also understood that if there were no consequences this time, there never would be. Jessica needed to learn that stealing is wrong, no matter who you steal from or why you do it. During the cross-examination, the defense attorney tried to paint me as a cold, vengeful mother. Mrs. Miller, isn't it true that you are sending your adopted daughter to prison out of personal revenge? No, I answered calmly. I am allowing the justice system to work. Jessica committed a crime. There are consequences for crimes. My job as a mother is not to protect her from the consequences of her bad decisions, but to teach her to make better ones. But don't you feel any responsibility for Jessica's behavior, for having raised her in a way that led to this? That question hit me hard. It was the question I had been asking myself for weeks. Of course I feel responsibility, I admitted. I believe I was too permissive. I believe I should have set clearer boundaries from a young age. I believe my unconditional love became a license for Jessica to disrespect me without consequences. If I had been a stricter mother, perhaps Jessica would have learned stronger values. And you don't think you should give her one last chance to learn those values without going to prison? She already had that chance. She had it for 6 months while she was stealing small amounts. She had it when she decided to steal $450,000 at once. She had it when she celebrated deceiving me. Chances run out when someone uses them only to hurt you more. When I stepped down from the stand, Jessica was looking at me with tears in her eyes. But they were no longer tears of pleading or manipulation. They were tears of real understanding. She was finally understanding who her mother was and what she had lost. The trial lasted 3 days. In the end, the jury deliberated for only 2 hours. Guilty of first-degree embezzlement. Guilty of fraud. Guilty of unauthorized use of financial instruments. Jessica collapsed in her chair when she heard the verdict. Kevin, who had been in the gallery every day, ran out of the room. The judge scheduled the sentencing for the following week, but we already knew what it would be, between 5 and 8 years in federal prison. As I was leaving the courthouse, Jessica yelled to me from the defense table, "Mom, forgive me. Please, forgive me." I stopped at the door and turned back to her one last time. "I already forgive you, Jessica. But forgiveness doesn't mean avoiding consequences. It means freeing myself from resentment while you learn from your mistakes." And I walked out of the courthouse feeling, for the first time in years, that I had done the right thing as a mother. A week after the verdict, sentencing day arrived. The courtroom was even more crowded than during the trial. The media had turned my story into a viral phenomenon. Videos of my statements circulated on social media with headlines like "Entrepreneur Mom Sends Daughter to Prison for Theft and the Price of Family Ingratitude." Jessica looked gaunt. A week in the county jail, awaiting sentencing, had completely changed her appearance. Her blonde hair was dull, she had deep dark circles under her eyes, and she had lost weight. There was nothing left of the arrogant woman who had celebrated stealing from me. The judge, an older man with a reputation for being stern but fair, reviewed all the documents before speaking. "Miss Williams," he said, addressing Jessica, "this court has carefully reviewed your case. The theft of $580,000 over a period of 6 months shows premeditation, planning, and a systematic escalation in the severity of your actions." Jessica began to tremble visibly. "However," the judge continued, "I have also considered your circumstances. You are a first-time offender. You have shown remorse during the proceedings. And this crime was committed against a family member, which suggests deeper emotional issues rather than purely criminal ones." My heart began to beat faster. Was he going to be more lenient than expected? For the charges of embezzlement and fraud, I sentenced Diana Williams to 6 years in federal prison, with the possibility of parole after 4 years for good behavior. Additionally, you must pay full restitution of $580,000, plus interest and legal costs, which amounts to a total of $720,000. Jessica completely collapsed. Her defense attorney held her up as she sobbed uncontrollably. Furthermore, the judge added, "During your period of parole, Miss Williams will be prohibited from contacting the victim, Mrs. Carolyn Miller, without express judicial authorization. This restraining order will be in effect for 10 years. 10 years without being able to contact me. My daughter couldn't talk to me, visit me, or come near me for a decade. Do you have anything to say before this hearing concludes, Miss Williams?" the judge asked. Jessica managed to stand, leaning on the table. Her voice was barely a whisper, but the microphone picked up every word. "Yes, Your Honor. I want to apologize to my mother in front of everyone. Carolyn adopted me when I was an orphan child and gave me everything. Literally everything. Her time, her money, her love, her dreams. And I repaid her with cruelty and ingratitude." Tears streamed down her face. "For years, I treated her like she was my personal servant, like she owed me something just for existing. I never valued her sacrifices. I never respected her love. And when I found out she had money, my first reaction was to steal it and celebrate having deceived her." The silence in the room was total. Even the reporters had stopped writing. "Mom," Jessica looked directly at me, "I know it's too late. I know I destroyed our relationship forever. But I want you to know that now I understand everything you did for me. I understand what I lost. I understand that you weren't my enemy. You were my greatest protector, and I was too blind and too cruel to see it." Her voice broke completely. "If I could turn back time, I would change everything. I would treat you with the respect you always deserved. I would value every sacrifice you made. I would love you the way you loved me. But it's too late for that. I can only hope that someday, when I get out of prison, you can find in your heart a small space to forgive the daughter who failed you so completely." She sat down and continued to weep silently. The judge looked at me. "Mrs. Miller, do you wish to make a statement?" I stood up slowly. For weeks, I had thought about this moment, about what I would say to Jessica if I had the chance. "Your Honor, for 24 years, I was the mother who forgave everything, who accepted any abuse, who sacrificed everything just to keep the family peace. I thought unconditional love meant love without limits, love without consequences, love that allows any behavior just so you don't lose the person you love." I looked directly at Jessica. But that kind of love isn't real love. It's codependency disguised as kindness. It's fear disguised as generosity. For years, I allowed Jessica to disrespect me because I was terrified of losing her love. But what I didn't understand is that respect that is lost without consequences can never turn into real love. My voice grew stronger. "Jessica, I love you. I will always love you. You are my adopted daughter, the little girl I chose to love when you were 3 years old. But loving you doesn't mean letting you destroy me. Loving you means doing the hard thing when it's necessary, even if it means setting boundaries that hurt." I paused to control my emotions. "I accept your apology. I believe you finally understand what you've lost. But apologies don't erase actions. Remorse doesn't eliminate consequences. You are going to prison not because I'm a cruel mother, but because decisions have outcomes, and you made decisions that led to this outcome." Jessica cried silently as I spoke. "I hope you use these years in prison to become the woman you always had the potential to be. The woman who values the people who love her. The woman who understands that gratitude is not weakness, but strength. The woman who knows that respect is the foundation of any real relationship." I took a deep breath before finishing. "And when you get out of prison, if you have truly changed, if you have truly learned these values, maybe we can rebuild some kind of relationship. But it will be a different relationship, one based on mutual respect, not on my fear of losing you and your certainty that you can treat me badly without consequences." I sat down, feeling as if I had closed a chapter of my life that had been open for far too long. The judge banged his gavel. "Court is adjourned. Miss Williams will be transferred to the assigned federal institution within the next 2 weeks." As Jessica was escorted out of the courtroom in handcuffs, she looked at me one last time. In her eyes, there was no longer pleading or manipulation, only genuine sadness and, for the first time in years, real respect for me. I walked out of the courthouse surrounded by reporters shouting questions, but I didn't answer any. I had more important things to do. That afternoon, I drove straight to Translogistics. I had a company to run, employees who depended on me, and a life to rebuild. For the first time in 24 years, I was going to live for myself, unapologetically. Brenda greeted me with a hug. "Mrs. Miller, we all saw the news. How are you feeling?" "I feel free, Brenda. For the first time in years, I feel completely free." And it was true. The weight of 2 decades of codependent motherhood had lifted from my shoulders. I no longer had to walk on eggshells to avoid Jessica's anger. I no longer had to justify every decision in my life to someone who saw me as her enemy. I no longer had to live in fear of disappointing a daughter who had never valued anything I did for her. Jessica was going to spend the next 4 to 6 years in prison, and I was going to spend that time rediscovering who Carolyn was when she wasn't being the mother of an ungrateful daughter. For the first time in decades, the future looked bright. 6 months after Jessica's sentencing, my life had changed more than I ever could have imagined. Without the constant drama of dealing with her ingratitude and manipulation, Translogistics was thriving like never before. We had won 3 major contracts, expanded our team to 30 employees, and opened a second office in the next city over. But the most significant change wasn't professional, it was personal. For the first time in 24 years, I was living for myself. I had sold the house where I lived with Jessica. It was too big for me alone and filled with painful memories. Instead, I bought a modern penthouse in the city center, with a panoramic view, and all the luxuries I had always denied myself because I had to save for Jessica's future. I had also started doing things I had never allowed myself. Painting classes on Tuesday nights, a trip to Europe I had postponed for years, dinners at fancy restaurants without feeling guilty about spending money unnecessarily. It was as if I had woken up from a 2-decade-long dream where my only identity had been Jessica's mother. One Friday afternoon, while reviewing financial reports in my office, Brenda knocked on the door. "Mrs. Miller, there's someone here to see you. He says his name is Kevin, your daughter's husband." My stomach tightened immediately. "What does he want?" "He didn't say, just that it's urgent, and he needs to talk to you about Jessica." I hesitated for a moment. The restraining order only applied to Jessica, not to Kevin, but I had no desire to speak with him either. "Send him in," I finally decided. "But stay close, in case I need you to call security." Kevin walked into my office looking completely different from the arrogant man who had celebrated robbing me months ago. He had lost weight, had dark circles under his eyes, and his clothes looked cheap and worn. The luxuries bought with my stolen money had clearly vanished from his life. "Mrs. Miller, thank you for seeing me," he said with a trembling voice. "What do you want, Kevin? I have a company to run. It's about Jessica. She's not doing well in prison. They've transferred her 3 times because she's having problems with the other inmates. She's losing weight, not sleeping, and the psychologists say she's developing severe depression. And what do you want me to do about it? Visit her, talk to her. You're the only real family she has." I can't help her anymore." "What does that mean?" Kevin lowered his head in shame. "I filed for divorce last week. I can't stay married to someone who's in prison for theft. My family pressured me. My friends turned their backs on me. I lost my job when they found out what happened. My life was completely destroyed by being associated with Jessica." Interesting. When Jessica had stolen money, Kevin was happy to be her accomplice. But when the consequences arrived, he abandoned her immediately. "Kevin, does that feeling seem familiar to you? The feeling of someone who is supposed to love you abandoning you when things get tough?" He looked at me, confused. "For years, Jessica abandoned me emotionally every time I needed support, every time I had problems, every time I felt alone, every time I needed my daughter. She wasn't available. But I never abandoned her. I never filed for divorce from being her mother. I was always there, no matter how she treated me." "But ma'am, this is different." "No, Kevin. It's exactly the same. The difference is that when Jessica treated me badly, I kept loving her unconditionally. When Jessica faces consequences for her actions, you abandon her immediately. Which one of us truly loved her?" Kevin didn't know what to say. "Do you know what I find most interesting about your visit?" I continued. "You didn't come here because you love Jessica and want to help her. You came here because you feel guilty for abandoning her, and you want me to do the emotional work you don't want to do. That's not it, ma'am. I really do care about Jessica. If you really cared about Jessica, you wouldn't have filed for divorce while she's at her most vulnerable. You wouldn't expect her mother, whom she robbed and humiliated, to clean up the emotional mess you don't want to handle." I stood up and walked to the window. "Kevin, for 24 years, I was the person who was always available to clean up Jessica's emotional messes. The one who always forgave, who always gave second chances, who was always there no matter how she treated me. And you know what I learned? What? That when you're the person who always forgives, you become the person who always gets hurt. When you're the person who has no boundaries, you become the person everyone crosses. When you're the person who always rescues others from the consequences of their actions, you become the person who prevents them from growing and maturing." I turned to face him directly. "Jessica is in prison not because she's a bad person deep down, but because she never had to face real consequences for her bad decisions. Every time she did something hurtful or destructive, I rescued her. Every time she needed to learn a difficult lesson, I made it easy for her. Every time she should have felt guilt or remorse, I absorbed those emotions for her. But she's really suffering now, ma'am." "Yes, Kevin, now she is really suffering. And that suffering is exactly what she needs to become a better person. If I rescue her now, if I go running to comfort her and make her life easier, I will be taking away her chance to truly grow." Kevin looked desperate. "But she's your daughter, ma'am. Your own adopted daughter. It's precisely because she is my adopted daughter, because I chose to love her when she was 3, that I have a responsibility to make sure she becomes a good person. And sometimes, being a good parent means allowing your child to suffer the consequences of their decisions, even when it breaks your heart to see them suffer." So, you're not going to visit her? You're not going to talk to her? The restraining order prohibits me from contacting Jessica for 10 years. But even if that order didn't exist, I wouldn't visit her. Jessica needs these years to reflect on her actions, to develop real empathy, to learn to value the people who love her. If I show up running to rescue her the first time things get tough, I will have wasted this opportunity for growth. Kevin stood up to leave, clearly frustrated that he hadn't gotten what he wanted. "One last thing, Kevin," I said as he headed for the door. "The next time someone abandons you when things get difficult, you'll remember this moment. And maybe you'll understand a little better what I lived through for 24 years with Jessica." He left without another word. That night, for the first time since the sentencing, I allowed myself to cry for Jessica. I didn't cry out of guilt or regret for my decisions, but out of genuine pain for what we had lost. I cried for the mother-daughter relationship we never had, for the years I wasted trying to earn her love and respect, for the wonderful woman Jessica could have been if she had learned stronger values from a young age. But I also cried with relief. Relief at finally being free from a toxic relationship that had consumed me for decades. Relief at having found the courage to prioritize myself. Relief at having broken the cycle of emotional abuse that had defined my motherhood. When I finished crying, I felt clean, as if I had washed away the last remnants of guilt and codependency left in my system. The next day, I made a decision I had been postponing for months. I legally changed my last name. I was no longer Carolyn Williams, the name I had taken when I adopted Jessica. I was now simply Carolyn Miller, successful entrepreneur, independent woman, a whole person on my own. Jessica had 4 more years of prison ahead of her. 4 years to grow, to reflect, to become the woman she always had the potential to be. And I had the rest of my life to be happy. 4 years after the trial, I received a letter I wasn't expecting. The return address read, Jessica Williams, Federal Correctional Institution. She had been released on parole for good behavior, exactly as the judge had predicted. Over these 4 years, I had built a completely new life. Trans Logistics now had offices in 3 cities and over 50 employees. I had written a book about my experience called Love Without Limits: Why Setting Boundaries is the Greatest Act of Love, which had become a bestseller. I also gave lectures on toxic family relationships and codependency. But the most significant change had been personal. At 71, I had learned to live for myself without apology. I had an active social life, hobbies I was passionate about, and, for the first time in decades, real peace of mind. Jessica's letter was different from anything I had ever received from her. There were no pleas, no manipulation, no excuses. It was a letter from a mature woman who had done serious work on her personal growth. "Dear Mom," it began, "I know the restraining order prohibits me from contacting you directly, but my parole officer helped me get permission to send this letter through official channels. I don't expect a response, or forgiveness, or reconciliation. I just needed you to know what these 4 years have been like for me. The first few months in prison were the hardest of my life, not just because of the physical conditions, but because for the first time, I had no escape. I couldn't blame you. I couldn't distract myself with shopping or parties. I couldn't manipulate anyone into solving my problems. I was completely alone with my thoughts and my actions. For the first year, I kept blaming you. I kept believing you were a cruel mother who had ruined my life out of revenge. But the mandatory therapy began to show me things about myself I had never wanted to see. My therapist, a woman named Patricia, asked me a question that changed everything. Can you remember any time in your adult life when you did something genuinely sacrificial for your mother? I tried to answer for weeks. I searched my memory for any moment when I had put your needs before mine, when I had done something difficult to make you happy, when I had sacrificed something important to me for your well-being. I couldn't find a single example. That realization destroyed me. I realized that for 24 years, I had been a daughter who only took, never gave. A daughter who saw her mother as a resource to be exploited, not a person to be loved and respected. A daughter who had mistaken your unconditional love for weakness, your generosity for obligation, your sacrifice for stupidity. I spent the second year in prison, in a deep depression. Not because I felt like a victim, but because I finally understood the magnitude of what I had lost. I hadn't just lost my freedom, my house, my marriage. I had lost the only person in the world who had ever truly loved me, and I had lost her because of my own cruelty and ingratitude. During the 3rd year, I began working in more intensive rehabilitation programs. Anger management classes, group therapy for white-collar criminals, empathy development programs. Slowly, I began to understand not only what I had done to you, but the impact my theft had had on your employees, on their families, on the entire community that depended on your company. I met other women who had committed similar crimes. Many had stories of mothers who had rescued them time and again, who had never allowed them to face real consequences. We had all mistaken permissive love for real love. We had all hurt the people who loved us most deeply. The 4th year was different. I started helping in the programs for first-time offenders, sharing my story as a warning. I told them about how the lack of boundaries and consequences had turned me into a person incapable of gratitude, empathy, or personal responsibility. I saw in their eyes the same shock I had felt when I finally understood who I had really been. I also started writing. Not letters to you, because I knew it was forbidden, but a journal where I processed everything I had learned about myself, about our relationship, about the damage I had caused. Writing became my way of making peace with myself and with the woman I had been. Now, I'm out. I live in a halfway house, work in a bakery for minimum wage, and every penny I earn after my basic expenses goes toward the restitution I owe you. By my calculations, it will take me about 15 years to pay you back completely, assuming I can get better jobs eventually. I'm not writing to ask for your forgiveness, because I know I don't deserve it. I'm not writing to ask for a second chance, because I know I used all my chances destroying our relationship. I'm writing so you know that the sacrifice you made by allowing me to face the consequences of my actions was not in vain. I am a different person now, a person who understands that respect is earned with actions, not words. A person who understands that gratitude is the foundation of any healthy relationship. A person who understands that real love includes boundaries, responsibility, and mutual growth. If you ever decided to give me the chance to meet this new version of myself, I would be eternally grateful. But if you decide it's too late, that the damage was too deep, that you need to protect your peace of mind from any possibility of me hurting you again, I will completely understand that, too. What I want you to know, more than anything, is that I now understand what I lost. I didn't lose a mother who controlled or limited me. I lost a mother who loved me so deeply that she sacrificed her own happiness for mine for decades. I lost a mother who worked tirelessly to give me opportunities I never valued. I lost a mother who saw me as her greatest treasure when I saw her as my biggest obstacle. And I want you to know that the woman I have become over these 4 years would have been proud to be your daughter. She would have valued every sacrifice, respected every decision, and loved every day she could have spent with you. I am deeply sorry that I got to know her too late. Whatever your decision about our future, I want you to live the rest of your life knowing that your love was not wasted, that your sacrifices were not in vain, that the lesson you taught me by setting boundaries finally turned me into the woman you always hoped I could be. I love you, Mom, not as the manipulative daughter I used to be, but as the grateful woman I became, thanks to your courage to do the right thing, even when it broke your heart. Your daughter who finally grew up, Jessica. When I finished reading the letter, I cried. But they weren't tears of sadness or regret. They were tears of relief and, surprisingly, of maternal pride. For the first time in 28 years, Jessica had written something that sounded like the daughter I had always hoped to have. A daughter who understood the value of sacrifice, who appreciated the love she was given, who took responsibility for her actions without blaming others. Was it too late for a relationship? Could I trust that this change was real and permanent? Was it worth risking the peace I had found over these 4 years? I didn't know. But for the first time since the day I discovered the theft, I felt that maybe, just maybe, my daughter had come home. I don't regret sending her to prison. I only regret not understanding sooner that kindness should never be practiced at the expense of self-destruction, that real love requires boundaries, and that sometimes, to save someone you love, you first have to save yourself. The story of Jessica and me wasn't over, but for the first time in decades, I had hope that the next chapter would be written by 2 women who respected each other, instead of a desperate mother and an ungrateful daughter. Maybe it's never too late to learn how to love correctly.